Reporting it is 8:10. Is it ever right in any circumstances for men and women to be told that they must sit separately in university lectures because a visiting speaker's religious sensibilities would be offended if this didn't happen? Whose rights should we be backing in modern Britain when the rights of some religious people, in this case normally Islamic, and the rights of others clash? This is not a theoretical question. It goes on. A body called Student Rights suggests that it happens quite frequently and at institutions around the country. It happened at University College in London this year. A prominent American academic threatened to walk out of a debate. "Quit the segregation or I'm out of here," he said. Women's groups and others regard it as a celebrated case, and they are horrified that Universities UK, which represents universities and colleges around the country, has issued advice that they say sanctions this kind of segregation, effectively puts women's rights to do what they want at university on a lower footing, and they say it's a policy that rewards extremists and penalises moderates. Here's what an LSE student and atheist, Abhishek Padnis, said in yesterday's programme.
University is bowing to the most peevish elements of religion, the most extreme of elements of any religion they can find, and assuming that to be the truest expression of that religion. There isn't a huge nationwide agitation for gender segregation at universities, and yet universities are giving up without a fight.
We'll hear in a moment from the Chief Executive of Universities UK. But first, I should say we have tried to get a number of politicians to come and talk about this. It is extraordinarily difficult. The government won't come. We've approached the Department of Business, who have a responsibility for universities, the Communities Department, from the Labour opposition, Yvette Cooper, Gloria Di Piero, the Minister for Women, none of them available. But Jack Straw, the former Home Secretary, is on the phone to us now. Good morning, Mr. Straw.
Good morning. I'm in Jerusalem, by the way,
right,
in case
okay.
you wonder, and it's snowing like crazy.
OK, well, we won't keep you for long. Just give us your view of what's happening here. What do you think of it?
I am both shocked and appalled by the decision of Universities UK. What they're trying to do here is to do something which is impossible. They're trying to insinuate that it is possible to be neutral as between whether women should be treated equally or whether they should be treated unequally. And where they've landed, I'm sure unintentionally, is at a position where they're indulging zealotry. It's remarkably few, let me say, even people who are very, very devout Muslims who take the view that men and women should be segregated at meetings. If that is their view, then private groups are entitled to hire private halls anywhere around the country, and if they want a meeting on that basis, that's one thing. But for the universities, which are liberal institutions, if they are anything to indulge such extraordinary behaviour, and behaviour which, in my view, has no part in our culture, although we allow it, I think is wrong, and it's antithetical to the idea of a university.
What Universities UK is saying, we'll hear directly from them in a second, but what they've said in statements before is, look, this is the law. We've got a council to look at it, and we are advised that the human rights of some speakers might be trampled upon were we to refuse to do this.
Well, I'd like to see that interpretation of the law tested in our highest courts, because I'm not aware of any judgment which says that a university has to enforce segregation, because that's essentially what they're saying, that by permitting a meeting where men and women are separated, that they are endorsing such a decision by these minority religious zealots.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure that if it went to one of our highest courts, our courts would say, hang on a second, a basic human right is that men and women are treated equally. This is not equal treatment.
Jack Straw, thank you very much. Well, as I was saying, Chief Executive of Universities UK, Nicola Dandridge, is with us here in the studio. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
The charge is that you are putting the freedom of misogynists above the freedom of women.
Can I just go back to 2 points which I think are really fundamentally important here? We are not talking about universities enforcing segregation. One of the questions that runs through our case study, which illustrates this question, is is this segregation voluntary? Have the people who are likely to come to this event agreed to the segregation? And that is something that would be fundamental importance to a university in making a decision. In practice, if the people coming to this event said, we do not want to segregate and separate out men and women, it is inconceivable that the university would impose it on them. So I think what we're talking about in practice here is voluntary segregation, and that's what happens in practice, that the people participating choose. Now,
come on, you know as well as I do, it wouldn't be voluntary segregation in many cases, and what would be happening is pressure would be put on Muslim women in particular to go along with what they were being told to do, and your job is to protect them, and you're failing to do it.
If the university decided that there was pressure being put on women to sit in a certain place, then almost certainly it wouldn't let this event go ahead.
Well, the very effect of it, the impact of it happening is putting pressure on them to sit in a certain place.
No, because I think what's very uncomfortable about this argument is that you're assuming that we have the right to impose views on participants. Now, if the participants say this is how they want it to be, it's not appropriate for us to disregard their views and say
not?
No, because if people feel more comfortable about sitting separately, and that's invariably the situation that will arise in these cases, then universities have to listen to these views. The other thing which I think is really important in all of this, we're not talking about teaching lectures, the sort of core business of universities.
No, sure, we're talking about visiting people.
Well, it's more than that. This particular case study is very specific. It's talking about an event to discuss faith in the modern world in the course of a series of lectures about different approaches to religion. So this is not core university teaching, and I think that's quite important because there is a sense in which this might be happening during the course of a biology lecture or whatever, and that's clearly not the case.
Yeah.
This is very specific to its facts in terms of it being an event.
And this is legal advice, is it, that you've received?
Yes.
And are you going to publish that legal advice so that people
very happy to make it public.
You will publish it?
Well, yes, we can. There's absolutely no problem about that at all.
Because what Jack Straw says is if it went to court, he can't see it standing. And I suppose my next question then, given that the upset that there is, would you be willing to test it, to go to court and say, actually, we want to stand up for liberal values, the kind of liberal values that have allowed women to go to university in the first place and allow them to sit where the heck they want when they get to university, and we will take it to court and see what the law of the land is.
If women want to sit, to use your words, where the heck they want, then absolutely they should be entitled to. And one of the...
But you're allowing them not to be entitled to.
No, not at all. We're saying that they have the right to sit where they want. And you're the one that's suggesting they don't have the right to sit where they want. Look, there's a difference here between, say, gender segregation, and people keep on making an analogy with race. I mean, it is possible for women, for instance, to choose to be educated in an all-women environment. I mean, it's not something which is so alien to our culture that it has to be regarded like race segregation, which it's totally different and it's unlawful, and there is no doubt about that whatsoever.
What about segregation by sexuality? I mean, what if someone, as might be possible actually, an Islamic speaker or an Orthodox Jew might say, I want homosexuals to be on one side of the room, or not here at all?
Why? Because firstly, that has never happened as far as I'm aware, and I can't imagine the participants, heterosexual or homosexual, saying they'd want to segregate in that way.
Surely that you can't you? I mean, there'd be plenty of extremist religious people who might regard homosexuality as a sin.
I can't imagine
the audience
segregated
like that.
I can't imagine any circumstances in which the potential audience would say that that's what they wanted. That's totally hypothetical anyway. What we're talking about here is a case study about gender, and I think what's being missed in this discussion is that this is actually about free speech. This is about how do you let people advance views that may be offensive. We start this publication with a statement saying it is better to debate a question without settling it than to settle a question without debating it.
You are more concerned about the free speech of someone who doesn't like women and wants them to be put in a separate place in a room than you are about the rights of a woman to sit where she wants to.
Absolutely not at all. If a woman wants to sit where she wants to, she can sit where she wants to. I mean, that's fundamental, of course.
But you're saying she has to assert that right, even though she's being told by people in the room that you shouldn't do it.
Not at all.
But you are, and that's the whole point of this.
If this event goes ahead, there would be an extensive discussion within the university with the groups involved as to what it is that the participants wanted. What you're saying is that there are no circumstances in which a woman might choose to sit in a woman's only area, and that's simply not true.
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that some women might feel that they're forced to, and because of that, you should stand up for the rights of all women to sit where they want. It's a pretty simple thing, isn't it? And you have the power to do it. You could go to court and say, we believe in the canon of liberal values in universities that has led us to this point in our civilization, in our life. And if people believe differently, then they can go and hold their lectures somewhere else.
What the law says is that segregation on the grounds of gender may or may not be a disadvantage. And what this case study is exploring is when it may be a disadvantage and where it may not be. And in circumstances where the audience are saying that they prefer to sit in different groups, then we're saying the university should respect their views, providing, and this is critical, providing there is no disadvantage to either men or women. Now, if there was evidence of disadvantage...
That's what they used to say about apartheid, isn't it? Separate but equal.
So we disregard what people are telling us. I don't think that's how universities operate. This is about ensuring that everyone has their right to sit where they want, including those who wish to sit in separate areas. And that element of voluntary choice is really critical. It's not a question of imposing views on students here.
Nicola Dandridge, Chief Executive of Universities UK. Thank you very much. Thanks, Simon. 9:15. Let's turn back to the issue of Universities UK, this body that represents quite a number of universities and colleges that has issued advice to its members that in certain circumstances segregated seating for male and female students might be allowed if it had been requested by a speaker from what Universities UK calls an orthodox religious group. We heard earlier from Nicola Dandridge, the Chief Executive of Universities UK, and from Jack Straw, the former Home Secretary. And I said at the time it was difficult to get politicians on to talk about it, and we did approach quite a few, and from the Labour Party, the Shadow Home Secretary and the Shadow Minister of Women, but we failed to approach the Shadow Business Secretary, and it is their business universities, that's where the universities of the country fall politically, and we should have done, because he's on the line and he rang in. Chukra Muna, good morning.
Hi Justin,
Hello
thank you very much for having me on.
Not at all. What did you make of what Nicola Dandridge said?
Well, I was horrified by what I heard in that report, and let me be absolutely clear, a future Labour government would not allow or tolerate segregation in our universities. It offends basic norms in our society. Now, of course, people should be free to practice their religion privately in places of worship and at religious events, but universities are publicly funded places of research, learning and teaching. And as such, there is no place, in my view, for state-sponsored segregation, so to speak. And I have to say, I heard what Universities UK have said, and I have seen the quotes from the guidance issued, and I would very much doubt that it would be keeping with the public sector duties to promote equality and non-discrimination if universities were to comply with that guidance.
What is your advice to Universities UK now?
Well, I think they should seriously consider the guidance, and I very much doubt that it would, if universities were allowing that type of thing to go on, I very much doubt it would be in keeping with the public sector duty to promote equality that our universities are subject to. And of course, as I think Jack Straw may have made the point, if people were to be suggesting that we have segregation, for example, on the basis of race or sexuality, there would be an absolute outcry. And that's why I understand the very strong views that people have expressed on hearing the news of what has been suggested could be allowed to go on in our universities, and we won't have it.
Couldn't be clearer, really, could you? Chukra Muna, thank you very much for talking to us.